So, Coach, one of our former teammates, a man that many in Australia are extremely familiar with for some very, very sharp work that he did in his playing days with both the Melbourne Tigers and the West Sydney Razorbacks. And now one of the ghost whisperers, one of these mysterious guys that just seems to be able to bring championships wherever he travels. And that is, of course, our very good friend, Phil Handy. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Man, it's a pleasure to be here with you two cats, Drew. Man, it's real, man. Straight up pleasure.
Hey, Phil, we really want to talk about what you're doing right now, your first-hand experiences of living inside the bubble and what all that entails. But before we get into that, just very briefly, your reflections of back playing in Australia with the Tigers and the Razorbacks and your time in Australia?
Man, you know what? I was watching like the NBA. I follow the NBL on Instagram, and they showed these clips of you and Copes on them lobs, catching lobs. And I was like, God damn, man, how come I couldn't be part of that team?
Well, you were there for a minute. You were part of it.
I was, but I'm going to tell you what, man, like, I didn't really realize how powerful the game was down there until I got there, Drew and Cope. And then to be a part of the team with you guys, and, kind of really get brought up to speed on the history of what you guys have been doing down there, man. That was a great time for me, towards the end of my career, but it was a great time and it was a great place for me to go and play because I felt like, I didn't have to go and be somebody that, had to score 25 or whatever night. I could just fit in. And, man, it was, I wish my first year in Melbourne would have been a little better. No injuries. If I wouldn't have been hurt, I probably felt like I would have had a better year. But, man, my time in Australia that's like my second home, man. I have a deep, deep love for that place, man.
That's great.
Phil, when you beat us in the semifinals when you played with West Sydney, do you remember that game?
What?
That was one of the games I brought out the best in me because you and Derek Rucker were coming at us so hard. You guys wanted that championship so badly that it was a time that I really reflected on it and thought, man, this guy can really play, man. You were dedicated to trying to shut me down and dedicated to just doing your thing, man. So it was great to play. I just watched that game about a month ago, and it was great to watch you out there and doing your thing, man.
It's crazy, like, understanding how you and Drew played, just, playing with you guys the year before. And then, again, like I said, just understanding the history of what you guys have been doing over the years. No, man, I was trying to do my damnedest to, one, compete, and two, come on, Drew, this dude down here, man, all he want to do is talk the whole time. So it was, man, that was one of the most memorable, playoff experiences I had as a player. Going through that series, man, because I remember we went to Melbourne and you guys absolutely smacked us in game one. I was just like, man, we can't go out like this, man. I think y'all beat us by like 30 or something like that. It was crazy. That was one of the most memorable experiences for me playing as well.
Yeah, that's right. And since then, and you see the journeys of players and you're one since being a player, and not just playing in Australia, but you also played some international basketball around the world with various club teams. But that transition from playing into what you're doing now, that journey you take, it's been an extraordinary one. And I've sort of said it in jest, but it's been remarkable that the programs that you have been involved in that have won NBA titles. How is it? What was that pathway like to go from a player into the coaching area?
Man, Drew, I think I tell people all the time, it was not expected. I did not expect to become a coach. That was kind of the last thing. When I was in Melbourne my first year, I actually started training some kids, just like off, here and there. And then when I went to West Sydney, I started doing it more regular. Started training on our off days. I started training some kids of parents, fans, whatever, a couple days a week. And, man, I really fell in love with that part of just teaching the game and, helping kids get better. So when I retired, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Initially, I took a year off from West Sydney. And Gordy McLeod was like, look, you want to take a year off? We'd love to have you back. And I took a year off and I was going to go back and play for another couple of years. But after that year off, I was like, man, I don't want to play anymore. I just, I ate what I wanted to eat. I didn't work out. I mentally, you know how we are, man. We're in the middle of it. It takes so much for us to turn on and compete. I was checked out, and I knew I wasn't in a place to compete at that level anymore. And so I really just got into training. I started doing it full time. And Tony Delk was one of my very first clients. And that really just, it kind of morphed. I did that. I started with one kid, and then it turned into 10 kids, and then it turned into 60 kids, and then it turned into 150 kids. And I was over a 13-year span. I went from training one kid to training every major university in Northern California.
Wow.
I had about 30 to 40 NBA clients. I started doing stuff with Australian players. I started doing stuff with the Japanese national team, and it really just exploded. And even during that time, I never saw myself being an NBA coach. I really love my business, and I love the training and helping players get better. And when Mike Brown got the job with the Lakers the first time, I had this thing where, man, going in the training industry, I wanted to really help the game and impact the game, and I wanted to be a great trainer. And so when Mike Brown got the job, I wasn't even really interested in the job. But what really tipped the hat for me was for me to have the opportunity to work with Kobe.
Right.
That was what sold me on it. So for me, it was a challenge. I think that I looked at that as like the biggest challenge as a trainer, to say, hey, look, here's an opportunity to try to build a relationship with one of the best players to ever play. And if your philosophy and methods will resonate with him, then you're on the right track. And that was my mind. That was my mindset. Coach Drew, I was thinking about that, and I was like, I didn't know Kobe. I had no relationship with him. I had no experience coaching on the NBA team. And, man, when I got there, I went through that first year. And, again, like I said, even when I went, I wasn't like, I'm going to make a career out of it. I was like, man, I can do this for a couple of years with Kobe and then go back to my business. Here we are 9 years later, man.
That's great.
Phil,
I couldn't see it going this direction, man.
Yeah.
You've coached guys like Kobe and Kawhi and LeBron. Kind of give us some comparisons of how they work out. I mean, some guy like Kawhi seems like a quiet guy to us. Is he a hard-nosed workout guy, or can you compare those three guys?
And Coach, I think what people don't understand, like we've all been around some great players, right? Alphas. Guys that just have a different gear. Man, these dudes, all three of those guys are extreme workers. Wow. I mean, I'm talking about just the intelligent part, right? The IQ. Not only are they physically gifted, but their basketball IQs are just through the roof. Like understanding the game, dissecting the game from the offensive side to the defensive side. They're like coaches. They're like coaches on the floor. So they understand what they want to work on. And understanding that, the conversations are about, hey, this is what I want to improve on. They know the areas they want to improve, and they're very efficient with their work. Like, they don't like to waste time. When they get on the court, they work, but it's not a lot of wasted time. Look, coach, let's go hard for 30 to 45 minutes. Let's get something out of it. Let's be efficient. I want to maximize my time. But they spend so much time taking care of their bodies as well. Right? They have millions of dollars, man.
Yeah.
These dudes spend millions of dollars between their nutrition, between their physical therapists. I mean, they have their own, between the weight guys. They spend a lot of money to take care of their bodies off the court to make sure that they can, perform at a high level. But they are very, I haven't really seen too many guys outwork LeBron. Kawhi is similar. And Cole everybody knows what his work ethic was, man.
Yeah.
Was it hard for you to gain their trust? Because, like you say, here you are, you're working out with kids, but then to go from that transition to superstars, megastars of the sport, was it just a matter of, well, these are the drills I do, this is the stuff I do, or did you have to come up with some freaky stuff?
I'm going to tell you, man. I'm going to tell you what Kobe did to me when I first got to the Lakers. It was a lockout that year in 2011, so there was no summer workouts. So the lockout ended. The day the lockout ended, Mike Brown hired me. 2 days later, training camp started.
Yep.
So I didn't have any time to have any ramp up with Kobe. So the first day that I got there, Mike Brown just said to me, look, I don't care what you do. Make sure the guys are working. That was his directive to me.
Right.
Program. So the first 3 or 4 days, I would be there early. Kobe would always be there way ahead of everybody else, but I would get there early to work guys out and start building. He would come out of the training room, Drew, pull up a chair on the side of the court and sit there for about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And watch and see what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand it, but I do now because he was wanting to see, do I know what I'm doing? What kind of stuff I'm doing? Does it make? And so he would go back, and maybe about 2 weeks later, man, he called me, and said, hey, look, I want you to meet me at the gym at 5:45.
Yeah.
So this was like a 2 o'clock in the afternoon call.
Yeah.
I show up at the gym at 5. I got there about 5:15. I was like, all right, bet, let's get it. I got there by 5:15 in the evening. Man, I waited. I sat there and waited 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, 6:15. So I was like, oh, man, this is not like him. I go home. I come in the next morning. I show up. We practice at 11. I get there at like 8. Man, I get there at 8. He comes barging out of the freaking training room like, yo, Ofo, where you been? Like, you just got to go show up to work? And I was like, bro, I was here last night at 5. He said, Mofo. I said 5:45 this morning.
Wow.
Yo, hey, listen. I sat there and looked at that dude like, man, I said, man, I was here last night. He said, man, 5:45 a.m. Be here tomorrow.
Wow.
My relationship with him started in that fashion, but what I did, Drew, was I asked him. It really became a collaboration between players like that, man. The first thing I would always do is say, look, now how can I help you?
Yeah.
What you are, who you are. What do you want to improve on? And Kobe told me, look, I want to get better with my ball handling. I want to continue to tighten up my footwork. And I just want to continue to be efficient. So that gave me a blueprint of some things to throw at him. And, they're the type of guys, Drew, if you giving them stuff, they'll tell you what they don't want. No, I don't really think that applies to the game. And so from there, I'm able to dissect, but I've always treated them just like any other player I work with. No fear. I really just try to go right at them and demand the respect right away in how I work. And I think all 3 of those guys, man, and any of the other guys I've had a chance to work with in the NBA, I think they all respect my work ethic. And that's what I've always tried to lead with in terms of building relationships with them through the work that we do on the court and not the other way around. And, soon enough, they really understood what I was about, helping them get better, helping them continue and further their careers. And then the trust really just kind of built in and, in a very organic way.
How many hours do you spend a day, Phil? I mean, I know you when you're training these guys individually, it's because there's so many guys on the team. How many hours a day are you in the gym training?
Well, it's a lot different for me now, Coach. Year 9. My first year, I was the first development coach that the Lakers ever hired. So I had to train all 15 guys.
Wow.
And that would be, 3 hours before practice, 2 hours after practice, and then sometimes guys would come in at night. So I had long days. Now it's a little bit more efficient. We have a staff. There's other coaches that are on the staff and development coaches that can take some of the load. But, even now, like we get on the court 2 hours before practice and players have a slotted time slot. Yep. And what we try to do with the guys now, we play so many games, is try to give them a 20-minute window to get some individual work in. And then sometimes guys are on the court after practice for like another hour. And then at night, so like I'm going back to the gym now every night, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and I'll spend another hour in there. So it's not too bad. Right. Again, I'm even, as we get older, man, I'm trying to learn how to continue to be efficient, keep my young legs young. Right. But it's, it's probably about a good four hours, before and after practice, Cope, and then maybe like another hour in the evenings. Yeah. So it's not too bad, man. I tell you what, it beats working.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does. Hey, Phil, one of the things over the first couple of weeks as we've followed this incredible transition that the NBA's had to make with the season shutting down and now trying to come back in this very unusual environment, which is known as the bubble. Some of the players initially perhaps a little bit reserved about the conditions that are there. What is it like in the bubble? Is it super restrictive, or can you go about your business, or is it's just strictly basketball?
Man, you know, Drew, look, I'm gonna be the first to tell you the NBA they've done a phenomenal job with this whole thing. I mean, they've spent millions of dollars on the resources. We have everything we need here. I mean, we're at Disney World. We're in a huge resort. We got lakes. There's fishing. There's bowling. There's
golf.
There's golfing. You know, there's bikes that you can ride. So inside the bubble, it's a pretty huge community. You know, you got restaurants. So you can go anywhere you want inside the property. You just can't leave the bubble. And when I say you can't, I mean, they're not stopping anyone, but if you do leave, you come back, you have to quarantine for a period of days. But we're in here, man. It's everything. It's probably the safest place we can be right now. You know, with this COVID, they test us every day. You know, they have strict rules about wearing your mask when you're outside of your room and in the property. And you know, they just try to, you know, encourage everybody to continue to practice social distancing. But I don't have no complaints. This, to me, it's like, you know, going from the States, it's like going to play overseas.
Yeah.
That's what I compare it to for me. You know, I don't get to see my family, but everything else is good.
Hey, Phil, at the start of the show, we were talking about some of the differences there may be for your top tier guys as opposed to your middle tier guys, and then the guys that are still trying to find their way. And we assume that LeBron and those top tier guys, the conditions for them are probably a little bit different to some of the lower tier guys. Is there some significant differences?
It should be. LeBron.
We say they should be. We say they've earned it, but yeah.
Hey, no, man. Like I said, look, certain guys, you know, certain guys get certain suites or whatever, but everybody's in the hotel. You know, people were making jokes. You know, Bron was going to get one of the whole casitas, have a whole village to himself. But no, man, everybody's here. You know, everybody's in the hotel. Everybody's being treated the same. So there's 3 different hotels on the property, and they got all 22 teams kind of spread out. And like I said, man, Disney World is a pretty vast. You know, it's a big property, and so if you want to go to the other properties, they have shuttles. Takes about 10 minutes. You know, so I mean, like I said, man, we have everything. You can get barbershop here. You got manicure and pedicures. Whatever you
these guys, these guys need to bring any family members, any kids or anything. I know in the AFL over here, they got a bubble in Queensland, and they let these players bring their families up. So, are there any families on the property? Any kids at all?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. They what they've done is to kind of, you know, get control of the bubble and make sure everything's running smooth. They're not allowing us to bring any families until after the first round of the playoffs. So I think mid-August, you know, mid to late August, you can start. And again, I don't even know all the rules on what the limitations will be, but I know when your families come into the bubble, they have to quarantine. So, you know, they set up different rooms for your families, and they have to quarantine for like maybe 4 to 7 days. So when they get to the property, you still can't see your family for another week until they go through the quarantine. But, you know, I think, like I said, man, they've tried to really do a test run. We've had 0 positive tests since we've been here.
That's great. Hey, Phil, we earlier on, and you're talking about all the different facilities that the NBA tried to create for the players. Well, Coach and I, we just had a little discussion. I didn't realise that strip clubs are the best place to get chicken wings. Now, Coach.
Hey, Phil, this guy's never been in a strip club in his life.
Yes, I have. I have been in a strip club.
Hey, Phil, he's never been in a strip club, and he don't know how good those chicken wings taste.
Now, it's all an education for me, but we're talking about, of course, Lou Williams, who, for some, I don't know whether he's had a brain freeze, but Coach tried to justify it in the fact that they've got the greatest chicken wings ever at a strip club. Now, I just...
No, go ahead, Drew. Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, when you hear something like that, now that you're part of the coaching staff,
Be honest, Phil.
Guys, mate, like if this is a rookie or someone's perhaps a little bit wet behind the ears that just hasn't, not worldly, but with all the education that you guys are getting, how can someone make a decision to go to a strip club for chicken wings?
Bill, be honest, Bill. Be honest.
No. Like, look, there's multiple sides to it.
Yes.
I've been to some strip clubs that have really good food. I'm gonna tell you too. There are some places that I've been to, been like, look, man, I'm going to get this food. Like real talk.
Yeah.
Like, whatever the atmosphere, what it is, but they have great food.
Yeah.
I just think there's a time and place for everything.
Correct.
That's what it all boils down to. Look, that's probably a habit in a place that Lou Will frequents for the food, but I think it's just a time and place, and probably what we're going through right now in terms of everybody, being away from their families and all the things that we're doing to be in the bubble. So, it's definitely magnified because of the timing. The timing of it. These are just not normal circumstances that we're living in, and the things that we're doing are not normal. So some of the normal stuff that we do, we just can't do. And, I think that's really probably the lesson for Lou to learn in this whole scenario.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, now we watched some of these preseason games. And can you tell us exactly how many people are around the courts? I mean, because the view is so different now when we watch the game. How many people are in the actual stadium or on the actual court?
So you have the players and the coaching staffs, and then you got the people, the games operation people that you see behind the screens, and on the other side of the court, it probably just other team staff members like the medical staff, general manager, and then they allow a couple of scouts to come in.
Right.
There's not very many people in the building.
They don't let any other players come in and watch you guys play.
Yeah, they haven't. I have not seen any of the other players. I know that they were trying to make concessions for players to come and watch.
Right.
But I haven't seen any.
Right.
Not any of our games. I'm not sure how they're going to play that out, but I know they're trying to make it available for players to go watch.
Right.
But really, everything is pretty digital and robot. So a lot of the cameras are robotic cameras.
Wow.
They have.
Right.
Man, they probably have about 10 to 15 cameras around every court. Get all these different angles. There's only one cameraman that's there on the floor, and all the rest of the cameras that you see, they're all robotic cameras.
Wow.
That is great.
I'm telling you, the thing is like it's like a studio. The NBA, man, tell you, man, the tech stuff that they put into this thing to build these courts out, it's unbelievable.
Hey, Phil, and just on where you are right now with the Lakers, and most people would have you guys as the favourites to win the whole thing.
Except me.
Except Copes. But
I want to hear who Cope's got.
Don't worry, you're going to hear it. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you.
What with you guys and the changes, you've brought a couple of different characters into your team since you've been had this little hiatus. But how do you guys regard it? Do you still get a sense that this has the same importance and same meaning as if it would be in that quest for that final run for a regular championship?
Hey, man, Droy, people can say asterisk or not.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I want my name to be by that asterisk.
Of course.
Either my name be by somebody else or our team. Look, man, I think LeBron is taking this as serious, and I'm saying starting with him, he's taking this as serious as anybody, and our team and our coaching staff and organization is too. We're not here, for any other reason except for try to finish the job and to compete for a championship. That's our mindset, man.
Has it been hard to, because we read things and we understand that sometimes you're reading things on the internet and you hear these little grabs and they may not necessarily be reflective of the reality, but it seems like if you see some comments from a guy like Dwight Howard, who's raised some concerns and issues and that peripheral stuff that goes on, have you as coaches and the coaching staff, has that been a priority to try and get people to understand that you want your name against that asterisk, and convince them of how important it is?
We don't even have to convince them, man. We got a pretty, we got a veteran-laden group. Like I said, when your leader is who he is, he sets the table for all of that. And Bron he comes to work every day, and he's serious about it. And every one of these guys, man, they're all dialed in. We don't have anybody that's, I think some of the social issues that were going on off the court, the things that are going on in this country, you see guys speaking up on that stuff before the whole bubble started.
Yep.
And now guys now that they're in the bubble, they're trying to use the platform to continue to speak up on those things. So it's two sides to it. Hey, we play our games, and when the games are over, let's continue to talk about this social injustice stuff that's going on in the world. So this is kind of what it's come to. And guys are locked in, man. They're ready to compete.
Nice.
Hey, if we can just cast your mind back to some of your previous successes as well, and the journey that you have been on between Toronto and situations, Cleveland, and you're there. We speak of these organisations as franchises. So as every franchise is, you would expect that there would be a lot of similarities. But for you, have you noticed the difference between the various organizations?
Yeah, man, they're all very different. I think one, the Lakers is a family-run business, right? So it's got a very, very unique family feel. The Buss family has owned this team for forever in the day, and it's more of an intimate setting, with the Lakers. You go to Cleveland and you go to Toronto, and it's more of corporate. Especially in Toronto. Toronto is the Raptors are owned by a group called MLS.
Right.
It's a big group where they own the hockey teams, they own the baseball team in Toronto. So it's a pretty big conglomerate. It's more of a corporate, but you can kind of see every organization, every ownership is different in how they run their club. Some teams are willing to spend whatever money it takes. Dan Gilbert, and I tip my hat to him when we were there. He spent whatever penny he had to spend to put a championship team on the floor over those years, and that was the price he paid to try to win. Some organizations, have smaller budgets. I mean, I think it's similar to what goes on in Australia as well. Certain markets. You go to Sydney, you go to Melbourne. Obviously you're gonna have a larger market. You go other places like Cairns or other smaller markets, you feel the difference in how organizations are run. I think it's the same in the NBA.
Speaking about these organizations, talk a little bit about how hard it was to leave Toronto after you won a championship. I mean,
Toronto's an amazing city, man.
Yeah, I know.
That is an amazing city, and it was extremely tough for me to leave after that. And people thought I left because of Kawhi, and I was like, no, I had nothing to do with me leaving, because I signed a 3-year deal to stay in Toronto. And really, what it boiled down to was being back close to my family. I have a 7-year-old son who lives in Los Angeles, and that was a driving force to that. And then also, I got a promotion, so I was moved to the front of the bench and my title, and it was another step in my career. So between those two things, man, it was kind of a hard opportunity to pass up. And then for me, the winning and the competing part is important. So, I looked at, kind of like the roster that the Lakers have put together, and I said, okay, if I'm going to leave Toronto, I need to make sure I'm putting myself in a situation where I can compete, be in a place to compete, and we have a chance to fight for a championship. So, it wasn't so much just moving to the front of the bench, but I think, moving back to the West Coast and being closer to my family was a driving factor to that. But it was extremely hard, Coach. Toronto, man.
Toronto's a beautiful place. It is
a nice place.
That's a beautiful place with great fans, man.
Yeah.
Great fans.
And of course, we all know everywhere is a beautiful place when you're winning NBA titles. Let's be honest.
Hey, Cleveland. Listen, Cleveland was beautiful.
Yeah, well, of course.
I enjoy Cleveland straight up. People make jokes about Cleveland, man, but that city grew on me. I was there for 5 years, man. It was a phenomenal place. Like you said, Drew, winning makes every place look and feel good.
Beautiful. Hey, Phil, just going on the coaching side of things, Copes and I, we did our little journey with the Sydney Kings, had a lot of fun and really proud of the accomplishments we had there. Talk to us about the challenges from a coaching standpoint of getting these megastars to buy into a system. The game has changed so much these days, and it's a lot of concepts rather than necessarily structure as such. But how difficult is it as a coaching staff to get the group all on the one page buying into a system?
Man, I found it. I haven't had any challenges with that, Julie, because of the guys that you think about the guys I've had a chance to coach. They all want to win. They're competitors. So winning matters to them. So what I've found is those dudes have challenged me and all of our staffs to be better coaches, right? They've challenged us to be on top of our game because they want the coaching. They want direction. They want structure. They want to be organized. Man, Bron is one of the most coachable dudes I've ever been around.
Right.
And it's just the opposite, Drew. If we're not coaching, if we're not on our P's and Q's, then that's when there's friction. Like, yo, coach, what are we doing? You know, like, we're not up to par with our game and understanding what our opponents are doing and having a plan. That's when those guys start going crazy. You know, they want the structure and they want some leadership. They want to be challenged in that way. And I've found that, man, that, you know, a lot of people think it's just the opposite. It's not. You got to stand in the box and coach these dudes. They want to be coached.
Yeah. Hold on. But I remember just on that point, and the reason I asked that question is that I can remember this incident.
I was going to speak about that. I was just about to speak about that.
It was played out right throughout the world. It was at a timeout. And here's our little old mate, Phil Handy, behind the bench, going toe-to-toe with the greatest.
I'm thinking myself, Phil, we'll be back over here in Australia in a couple days.
Man.
Oh,
You're screwed. You had a timeout. It's a heated moment. How do you respond?
No, you know, look, man, we've been in heated moments, right?
Yep.
We've been in plenty enough games where we're getting smacked for whatever reason. The other team is just no matter what we do, it's just their night. It was one of those nights in Toronto. Yeah. And it was a regular season game. And I'm telling you, I mean, Toronto was kicking our ass. It was like we were down 30. Yeah. And it was just everything we were doing was just so discombobulated. Yeah. But we came into a timeout, and I remember the bench was so frazzled, and you know, Bron was like yelling at some of his teammates, and I said, man, this starts with you. Like, don't yell at them dudes, man. You need to check with yourself. Like, this starts with you, man. Like, they're gonna follow your lead. So it's not just them, it's you too. All of you, you know, all you dudes out here messing around. We were just getting. He was like, man, you know, we were just going back and forth. So, but for me though, Drew, I've always tried to be just a no nonsense type of coach. Yeah. You coach the game, right? Yeah. When players are not doing the right thing, it doesn't matter who it is. Tell them. Yeah. Doesn't matter. And it's not about, you know, hurting anybody's feelings or, hey, look, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to coach. Yeah. You know, and if I see something on the floor, if I see something that's outlandish, I'm gonna say something. Now you can deal with it how you want to deal with it, but you know, I think the level of respect that me and Bron have for each other is obviously well documented. But it's just one of those things, man. We were just getting our butts whooped.
Are you telling me you didn't go back to the room that night and pack your bags? You said, this shit's over with.
Listen, bro. Let me tell you something right
now.
Bro,
I was worried for you. I was worried, Phil.
He's not even built like that. He's not built like that, man. That's for the dudes that are built with some weak skin, right? With a weak mind. You know, after the game was over, that was done and over with.
So no one, you guys didn't speak about it at all? No one said anything about it? Oh, that's great.
We talked about it at halftime, and then that was it.
Yeah. How is LeBron with his teammates in difficult set of circumstances? We saw a couple of seasons ago with J.R. Smith where he had a brain freeze and just didn't realize what the score was and time, and it looked like you could see his disappointment, of course. But what happens behind the scenes?
No, man, Bron has been great with his teammates. He's never thrown any of his teammates under the bus, ever. Whether it be in the media or even in private. Yeah, I think everybody was disappointed in that particular play, but I tell people all the time, that's not what lost that game. No, we know, right? There's all these other leading things that get to that point. You know, yeah, that was one glaring mistake, but that's not what cost us the game. You know, and I think Bron was highly upset, just like the rest of the guys. JR was upset, you know, but he never, not once did he ever throw him under the bus. I've never seen him throw any of his teammates under the bus. at any given time. He's always been one of those dudes that tried to lift up his teammates and understanding that, hey man, I need you guys. I need you guys to join the party. So he's always been one of those dudes to try to infuse confidence in those dudes at all times.
Is there one particular guy on the team that you better friends with than the others, or do you have that? Yeah, you have that coaching player relationship where you just on an even keel.
Man, Coach, I try to. Obviously, I have the longest standing relationship with LeBron with these group of dudes, but man, I try to build like real relationships with every one of these players.
Yep.
Every last one of them in their own way, and it's not about showing favoritism. I mean, I'm trying to help every one of these dudes get better at the game. And that's where my relationships starting to end with all of them, and the stuff in between, that just happens organically as you build that relationship on the floor.
Sure.
And it just turns into something. It becomes bigger than basketball once they recognize and see that I don't have an agenda except for them to become better players. But I try to treat them all the same.
And what about the style of play that we are seeing for the last few years? Small ball has become really in vogue. 5 out, very little post up, clear it all out, get to the rim or shoot the three. And then we see what Denver dished up. I don't know whether they're going to do it throughout the course and when it really counts, when they got 5 4-men and setters on the floor at the same times. Maybe they're just trying to look at something. But do you see a specific trend or what's the next incarnation of what style is going to be in vogue?
You know what, Drew? You think about the history of the game, right? What team? You tell me what team in any league around the world has ever won just shooting threes and layups? Tell me a team that's won a championship in that fashion. At some point, the mid-range game is a factor. Right? So we talk about what? Let's take good shots.
Yes.
All good shots. Let's take good threes. Let's take good shots at the rim. Let's take good shots in the mid. But the way the game is going, people are trying to eliminate that whole part of the court, and I don't agree with it.
Good. Here. Yes.
It's the game of basketball, right? So
of course,
you come down and let's get the best shot that we can. Doesn't matter where it is on the floor. Let's work offense, get the best shot. So that part of the game, I totally disagree with. That part of the analytics, I totally disagree with. And that's okay. But I always fall back to when the game is on the line, most of the time, where do your game winners come from? Somewhere in the mid-range, right? Yeah, you might get a game winner at the three-point line or you might get one at the rim, but those are very scarce. Most game winners are in the mid-range somewhere. Somebody gets to a spot on the floor, you rise up and you pull up. So I'm always talking to people about how important it is to distinguish. Let's talk about bad shots in all areas of the floor, right? And if you break it down in that sense and understand that we're trying to get the best shot possible, that changes the way you think about the game. And so I think people don't want to coach it. I'm gonna put it that way.
Well, mainly because the analytics say a certain thing, but you and the Lakers and the coaching staff, I'm sure you listen to that information, but you don't, like it seems a team like the Houston Rockets take it to the extreme. You guys, do you structure your stuff on the basis of the analytics, or do you just, like you say, structure it on creating good shots?
Man, I structure it on the point of let's take good shots, period. I don't care where they come from. That's my structure. Because, again, Drew, you can take bad threes. You can take bad shots at the rim.
Of course.
Right? And you can take bad mid-range shots. So my structure is I don't care about the analytics. My analytics, for me, I want the best shot available for us. And so, you look at those things and what they're trying to say is, hey, you can take all the twos that you want. We're going to shoot all these threes, and our 3 plus your 2, we're going to win out. No, not really, because as we all know, some nights and threes don't fall.
Yeah, we all know that.
Hey, look, Drew, you're close, man. You two of the best shooters I've ever played with, but those nights, you're gonna have those rough nights, so you got to have other ways of scoring. We can't always get to the rim, right? So there's a whole part of the game that's being left out. And so I'm all about, man, let's figure out how you can one, let's work on it. Work on your mid-range, just like you work on your threes and your layups.
Yeah.
You know, work on those things and you can become a better player at it.
Phil, we know you got to get out of here, but let me ask you a question. Do you see yourself being a head coach in the NBA one day?
Man, Cope, I think, man, you guys have had a taste in this business, right? This basketball world, coaching, you've seen the coaching side. It's a dog-eat-dog world.
Yes.
And for me, I'm all about the organic path. So over this 9-year stretch, man, all I've tried to do is focus on what's my job. You know, as a player development coach, I became a director of player development. You know, I became a 4th assistant. Now I'm a 3rd assistant. My focus every day, Coach, is to focus on mastering my job. I want to stay in my lane. I want to learn. I want to grow as much as I can, right? Yep. And if the head coaching opportunity presents itself, I'll be prepared.
Yep.
That's how I look at that, man. I don't have a roadmap. I'm not trying to be a head coach in 5 years. It's just organically. If that time comes and somebody sees me to be fit to be their head coach, and I feel like it's the right opportunity for me, I'll be ready for it.
And anyone who's watching this show, if you go on and Google Phil Handy, as I do, and you go on to YouTube, there is a bunch of stuff that you've put out there with coaching and how in which you train individuals, but in just a very, very short snippet. Give our audience some advice when you're coaching kids in that individual setting, what you're trying to prioritize.
Man, you're trying to teach fundamentals, right? One, we're trying to teach work ethic, for one. And I think for youth coaches, I tell people all the time, man, youth coaches are the most important coaches on the earth. Like, right? We coach professional athletes. Yeah, our job is important, but youth coaches are a lot of times they're the first coach that a young mind gets. And that coach could either turn them off or inspire them to want to continue to play. And I'm always encouraging youth coaches, one, study the game. You know, become more well-versed on how you can teach the game and understand the game. And then two, understand how to talk to young kids. It's not about just yelling and screaming at them, right? It's not about tearing their confidence down. You have to be able to discipline these kids, but at the same time, raise their level of confidence. So I'm always, you know, I created my app, Drew, the 94 Feet of Game app, and it serves to kind of help coaches, you know, understand how I interact with athletes and give training tips, give coaching tips. But it's really important, man, to get away from the gimmicks. Stop all the gimmick training. Work on the fundamentals. You know,
I like it.
Teach them kids how to dribble. Teach them how to shoot properly. Teach them how to make balanced moves. Teach them how to finish. Teach them how to play defense. Just all the basic stuff. Teach them how to pass the basketball. You know, teach them the basics and help them progress. Right? Help them progress. I think a lot of trainers, they go on YouTube and they're looking at all these other trainers that are doing all these crazy, wonderful tricks. And they get enamored by that. But that's not what the game is.
Yeah.
The game is teaching the basics and the fundamentals and really teaching kids what's the foundation. You know, so I'm always encouraging youth coaches, man, they have a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil, I understand we're running out of time here. You got to go work your guys out. But just for this upcoming season, NBA fans, we love the NBA here in Australia. Obviously, your Lakers are right up there, but talk us through the top two teams who you think will come out of the East and who is going to be the biggest threat to you guys.
Man, I tell you what, the East is loaded. I mean, you could take your pick. I mean, obviously Milwaukee's who they are. People are sleeping on Toronto because Kawhi is going. Toronto is still a contender. Boston is tough. Miami is tough. Philly is tough. Yeah, Philly's tough. So you got all of these teams in the East, man. It's gonna be some tough series, you know. And then you coming in the West. I mean, you know, look, you got Clippers, you have Houston, you have Denver, you know, you have Dallas, and people like teams like Portland that are kind of like right now outside the top 8. If that would potentially be our first round matchup in the first round, that's a tough series, man. Listen, there are no easy. So I think, you know, us we have to make sure we're locked into what we're doing. Worry about the Lakers and prepare ourselves. But the East, man, I'm looking at the East like I'm gonna look forward to watching some of those series in the East because, it's gonna be some dogfights.
Well, what team? They may not be necessarily the highest ranked team, but is there a specific team that gives you guys the most trouble? Who do you look at? Is there a team just because their style of play or a matchup? Or does anyone?
I think Toronto is a team that gives a lot of people problems because they don't. They got some good play. They have some great play, but they don't have what you would call a Kawhi anymore. But they have great players. Pascal's an all-star. Kyle Lowry's an all-star. Marc Gasol is who he is. But the way that they play so fast. They move the basketball. They spread you out. And they're scrappy on defense. They're long. Those type of teams, man, are tough because you can't just scout one or two players. You got to be prepared for their whole team because they got 10 guys that can come in and do something. Whether it be shoot the ball or drive the ball, they can make plays. So those type of teams are harder to guard and they're harder to play against because you lock in on Kawhi. Okay, they're gonna run some isolations. We can lock into that, but when they're constantly moving, and you got 6 or 7 guys that score 10 to 12 points, that's spread out. It's like, it's tough. It's really tough, man. So teams like that are real tough.
Phil, before you go, last time you were here, not last time, but when you were coaching in Cleveland, you gave me a couple of track suits, right? And you guys went on to win a championship.
That's right.
You call me after this interview and get my address, send me some Laker gear. You guys might have a chance of winning another championship.
Unbelievable.
I'm just telling you what it is. You remember you gave me a black one and a gray one. I still got you.
No, I owe you.
You know me, sucker. Send me something.
I owe you, bro. So when we hang up, man, text me Andrew's address, man. I'm going to send you guys some stuff.
Hey, the very last thing, I promise is the very last thing.
Oh, here we go.
Because your phone's dinging. There's probably LeBron saying,
Come on,
get
man.
your ass here.
Get the man fired, man.
But before you go, take LeBron out of the equation. Because we know that you're not biased, but it's you don't want to speak against someone that you're so intimately involved in. Outside of him, who is the best player in the NBA right now?
Active player? Man, I'd have to say either Giannis or Kawhi.
Yep.
Yeah, both those guys are they're beasts, man. But there's a handful of guys that are just super talented.
Yeah.
I would have to say those two guys are, again, Kevin Durant's not playing. He's injured. Right here in the bubble, I'd have to give, away from Bron, I'd have to give Giannis and Kawhi that next nod for those two guys because they're so powerful, man.
Yep.
Giannis has a specific skill set, and Kawhi is just he's a jack of all trades.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. Well, Phil, we know you got to get going. I reckon we've got through about 10% of the questions we had set out for you, and
let's get back to it again, man.
All your insight that you could provide us, because
let's get back to it again, man. We can do it again.
We definitely will. That's the worst. You're going to regret that.
Hey, we'll do it again if you guys make the playoffs. How about that? If you make the playoffs, we might call you.
Man, let's do it again, man.
Yeah, we're going to do it again. That's the worst thing you could have said to us because we're going to be badgering you.
Hey, if you guys make the playoffs, Phil, we might think about calling you back. How about that?
That's it. Nah, you guys be fine.
Hey, let's do that, man. We can do one when the playoffs start.
Okay, we'll do that.
Great, man. We're looking forward to it, and let's hope that not only you're in the playoffs, but you go real deep into it. You were my tip. Copes. He went with the Clippers. Can you believe that?
I already know.
I played with the Clippers. I'm gonna go with the Clippers. What's wrong with you?
You were there for 1 minute.
I was there longer than you, sucker.
Well, you were there long enough to go and pick up chicken at one of those places once. That's about how long you were there. You might have been there once.
Dude, man, don't even worry about that dude, man. It's all right.
Haters.
Be careful wherever we want.
Hey, Phil, we appreciate you, man. We appreciate you, brother. Thank you, man. Good luck, man.
Yeah, good man.
Win that championship for us, brother.
Good luck, pal. Thank you. Thanks.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.